Sarah Lawson's life had always been a series of carefully curated moments. From the outside, she embodied perfection: a charming home in the suburbs, a successful career as an interior designer, and a marriage that seemed to be the envy of all who knew them. She was the picture of grace and elegance, always poised, always smiling. But beneath the surface, there were cracks beginning to form, fractures that even Sarah's keen eye couldn't repair. It was on a warm summer evening, with the scent of jasmine wafting through the open windows, that Sarah's world came crashing down. She had come home early from work, intending to surprise her husband, Mark, with his favorite dinner. As she set the groceries upon the kitchen island, her mind wandered to their early years, when love was new and intoxicating. But those memories were shattered when she overheard hushed voices and stifled laughter coming from their bedroom. Heart pounding, Sarah crept up the stairs, her mind racing through a million rationalizations. Perhaps he was on the phone, or maybe he had a friend over. But as she pushed open the door, the truth hit her like a freight train. There, tangled in the sheets, was Mark with another woman, their intimacy a grotesque betrayal of everything Sarah had believed in. Time seemed to stand still. The room spun around her as she tried to comprehend the scene before her. The betrayal was not just in the act itself, but in the lies and deception that must have preceded it. How long had this been going on? How many times had he looked her in the eye and lied? Mark's face turned a ghostly white as he scrambled out of bed, but no words could undo the damage. The woman, equally startled, hastily gathered her clothes and fled, leaving an oppressive silence in her wake. Sarah felt a scream building inside her, but it emerged as a strangled whisper. "How could you?" There was no answer that could suffice. Mark stammered out excuses, apologies, but Sarah couldn't hear them. Her vision blurred with tears, she turned and fled the house, the home she had so lovingly made, now a place of unbearable pain. The next days were a blur of anger, sorrow, and confusion. Friends and family tried to console her, but their words felt hollow. Sarah realized she couldn't stay, not in that house, not in the city that held too many memories. She needed to escape, to find a place where she could breathe and start over. And so, with a heavy heart and trembling hands, Sarah packed her bags. She left behind the life she had built, the man she had loved, and the dreams that had been shattered. Her destination was a small coastal town she had once visited on a weekend getaway, a place of serene beauty and tranquil waters. It was there, she hoped, that she would find the strength to heal and rebuild her life from the ashes of her broken heart. The coastal town of Seaside Haven was a world away from the life Sarah Lawson had known. As her car wound down the narrow, sun-dappled road leading into town, she could feel the weight of her recent past beginning to lift. The air here was different, crisp and salty, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. The town itself was picturesque, with quaint cottages, vibrant gardens, and the endless expanse of the ocean stretching out beyond the horizon. Sarah parked her car in front of a small, charming cottage she had rented on a whim. Its weathered facade and ivy-covered walls exuded a quiet charm, inviting her to step inside and leave her troubles at the door. As she unpacked, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this place could be a new start, a refuge where she could heal and rediscover herself. Her first days in Seaside Haven were a mix of awe and awkwardness. The locals were friendly, their faces weathered by the sun and wind, their smiles genuine. Yet, despite their warmth, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Simple tasks, like finding the grocery store or navigating the winding streets, felt daunting. The town's slow pace was a stark contrast to the frenetic energy of the city she had left behind, and she found herself struggling to adjust. One afternoon, determined to explore her new home, Sarah decided to take a walk along the beach. The sand was cool beneath her feet, the sound of the waves soothing her frayed nerves. As she strolled, lost in thought, she noticed an artist at work near the shore. His easel was set up facing the ocean, and he moved with a quiet intensity, capturing the scene with broad, confident strokes. Curiosity piqued, Sarah approached, her footsteps muffled by the sand. The artist looked up, and their eyes met. He was ruggedly handsome, with a kind face marked by lines of both sorrow and joy. His name was Jake, he told her, and he had lived in Seaside Haven for years, finding solace in its beauty after the loss of his wife. Their conversation flowed easily, an unexpected connection forming between them. Jake spoke of his art and the inspiration he found in the ever-changing seascape. Sarah, in turn, shared her own story, her move to Seaside Haven, the betrayal that had driven her here, and her hopes for a fresh start. Jake listened with empathy, his own experiences of loss giving him a unique understanding of her pain. He offered her a simple, unspoken promise of friendship and support, something Sarah desperately needed but had been too afraid to seek. As they parted ways, Sarah felt a glimmer of something she hadn't felt in a long time, possibility. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself drawn to the beach, often crossing paths with Jake. Their encounters were brief but meaningful, each one a step towards healing. She began to see Seaside Haven not just as an escape, but as a place where she could rebuild her life, piece by piece. The early morning sun cast a golden glow over Seaside Haven as Sarah began her daily ritual. Each morning, she would rise before the world woke, savoring the quiet moments with a cup of coffee on her cottage porch. The routine, simple as it was, brought her a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. As days turned into weeks, Sarah ventured further into the town. She explored the cobblestone streets lined with charming shops, each with its own story and history. There was the bakery, where the smell of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, mingling with the salty sea breeze. The bookstore, a cozy nook filled with the comforting aroma of old pages and new adventures. And the local cafe, where the townsfolk gathered to exchange stories and laughter over steaming cups of tea. In these small discoveries, Sarah found a growing sense of belonging. Her walks often led her to the beach, where she would watch the waves crash against the shore, their rhythmic lullaby soothing her restless spirit. It was here, more often than not, that she would encounter Jake. Their friendship blossomed naturally, like the wildflowers that dotted the coastal paths. Jake was a man of few words, but his presence was steady and reassuring. They would walk together along the beach, the silence between them comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding of shared grief. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jake shared his own story. He spoke of his wife, Helen, a spirited woman whose laughter had been the soundtrack to his life. Her sudden illness and passing had left him adrift, seeking solace in the beauty of Seaside Haven and the canvases that helped him process his pain. Sarah listened, her heart aching for the loss he had endured. In Jake's story, she saw reflections of her own journey, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the search for something to fill the void. And in his eyes, she saw the same flicker of hope that had brought her to this town. As their bond deepened, Sarah found herself confiding in Jake more than she had with anyone else. She spoke of the life she had left behind, the dreams that had crumbled, and the fears that kept her awake at night. Jake's quiet strength was a balm to her wounds, his insights offering new perspectives. The peaceful environment of Seaside Haven worked its magic on Sarah. She began to immerse herself in the town's activities, volunteering at the community center, and even taking up gardening in her small backyard. Each new experience was a step towards healing, each new friend a reminder that she wasn't alone. In Jake's company, Sarah found not just a friend, but a kindred spirit. Their evenings spent talking by the fire, their shared laughter, and the gentle silences, became the highlight of her days. The pain of her past, while still present, began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of hope and possibility. Seaside Haven, with its tranquil beauty and welcoming community, was slowly becoming the home Sarah had longed for. And in Jake, she found a companion on her journey, someone who understood the depths of her sorrow and the heights of her dreams. Sarah and Jake's connection grew stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the town, Sarah and Jake decided to visit the local art supply store together. The shop was a treasure trove of colors and textures, and they spent a long time exploring its many nooks and crannies. "I used to love painting when I was younger," she confessed, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "But life got in the way, and I let it slip away." Jake nodded, understanding the unspoken words between them. "It's never too late to start again," he said gently. "Sometimes, it's the rediscovery that brings the most joy." Sarah smiled, grateful for his encouragement. As they left the store, she felt a warmth spread through her that had been absent for too long. It was as if a weight had been lifted, and she could finally breathe again. But as their friendship blossomed, so did the shadows of the past. One evening, while Sarah was at the local cafe, she noticed a woman watching her with cold, calculating eyes. The woman approached, introducing herself as Emily, Jake's ex-girlfriend. Emily was striking, with sharp features and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. She made it clear that she still had feelings for Jake and viewed Sarah as an intruder. Her words were polite, but there was a venomous undercurrent that Sarah couldn't ignore. "Jake and I have a history," Emily said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I'm sure you understand how difficult it is to let go of someone you love." Sarah felt a pang of unease. She had seen this kind of manipulation before, and it brought back memories of the betrayal she had fled. Determined not to be intimidated, she met Emily's gaze with calm resolve. "Jake and I are just friends," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady. "But I understand how important he is to you." Emily's smile tightened. "Just friends," she echoed. "For now." As Emily left, Sarah's mind buzzed with questions and doubts. She hadn't anticipated this new complication, and the idea of navigating such treacherous waters unsettled her. The peace Sarah had found in Seaside Haven was a fragile one, held together by the thin threads of her new routine and the budding relationship with Jake. But ghosts from the past have a way of resurfacing when least expected, and Sarah's was no exception. It began with a phone call. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner in her cozy cottage, the shrill ring of her phone cut through the calm. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. The caller ID flashed a name she had hoped never to see again, Mark Lawson. Her ex-husband's voice, once so familiar and comforting, now sent chills down her spine. He spoke with a rehearsed sincerity, expressing regret and a desire to talk things through. Sarah could hear the underlying menace in his tone, a stark reminder of the manipulation and control he had wielded over her for so long. "I've been thinking about us, Sarah," Mark said, his voice smooth and deceptive. "I know I made mistakes, but we had something real. We can work through this." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. The memories of his betrayal and the pain it had caused came rushing back. She had left that life behind, and she had no intention of being dragged back into his web of lies. "I've moved on, Mark," she replied, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. "There's nothing left to talk about." But Mark was relentless. Over the next few days, he bombarded her with calls and messages, each one more desperate and manipulative than the last. He spoke of their past, of the good times, trying to lure her back with a mix of nostalgia and guilt. When that failed, his tone shifted to one of anger and threats, accusing her of abandoning their marriage and ruining his life. The strain began to take its toll on Sarah. She found herself looking over her shoulder, the fear of Mark showing up in Seaside Haven gnawing at her peace. Her sleep became restless, haunted by nightmares of her past. The new life she had built began to feel fragile, as if it could be shattered at any moment by Mark's presence. Jake noticed the change in her, his keen eyes missing nothing. One evening, as they walked along the beach, he gently broached the subject. "Sarah, something's been bothering you. You can talk to me about it." For a moment, Sarah hesitated. She didn't want to burden Jake with her troubles, but the weight of carrying it alone was becoming too much. Taking a deep breath, she told him everything: Mark's calls, his threats, and the fear that he would come to Seaside Haven. Jake listened in silence, his expression darkening as she spoke. When she finished, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face this alone, Sarah. We'll handle it together." Buoyed by Jake's support, Sarah found the strength to confront Mark's attempts to manipulate her. She changed her phone number, blocking his access to her, and confided in the local authorities about her concerns. The community of Seaside Haven, which had embraced her so warmly, rallied around her, offering protection and support. Yet, despite her actions, a part of Sarah remained on edge. She knew Mark well enough to understand that he wouldn't give up easily. The battle for her peace of mind was far from over, but with Jake by her side and the support of her new friends, she felt a flicker of hope. The days following her confrontation with Mark were a whirlwind of emotion for Sarah, but amidst the turbulence, she found an unexpected solace in her newfound passion for painting. Jake had always encouraged her creative side, but now, with the shadows of her past threatening to encroach on her present, she turned to art as both an escape and a form of therapy. It had begun a few months back, on a crisp morning, the kind that promised a clear, bright day. Jake had invited Sarah to his studio, a spacious, light-filled room that overlooked the sea. The walls were adorned with his own work, vivid seascapes, haunting portraits, and abstract pieces that seemed to pulse with emotion. The scent of turpentine and canvas filled the air, creating an atmosphere of creative potential. "Why don't you try it?" Jake suggested, handing her a blank canvas and a palette of colors. His eyes sparkled with encouragement, a gentle push to explore this new avenue. Sarah hesitated, feeling the familiar pang of self-doubt. "I don't know, Jake. It's been so long since I did anything like this." "There's no right or wrong in art," he said softly. "Just express what you feel. Let the colors speak for you." Taking a deep breath, Sarah dipped her brush into the paint. At first, her strokes were tentative, hesitant. But as the colors began to blend and take shape, she felt something within her loosen, a knot of anxiety and fear that had been tightening for years. With each stroke, she poured out her emotions onto the canvas, the pain of betrayal, the fear of being pursued, and the fragile hope of new beginnings. Hours passed unnoticed as she lost herself in the act of creation. When she finally stepped back, she was surprised by what she saw, a vibrant, tumultuous seascape that mirrored the chaos and beauty within her. It was raw and unpolished, but it was hers, a reflection of her journey. Jake stood beside her, his gaze filled with admiration. "It's incredible, Sarah. You have a real talent." For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt a surge of pride. "Thank you, Jake. I didn't think I had it in me." "You always did," he replied. "Sometimes we just need a little nudge to discover it." With Jake's encouragement, Sarah continued to paint, each piece a step forward in her healing process. She found herself eagerly awaiting their sessions in the studio, where the worries of the world seemed to fade into the background. The rhythmic motion of the brush, the blending of colors, and the quiet companionship of Jake created a sanctuary where she could rebuild herself. Their bond deepened through these shared moments, a silent understanding growing between them. Jake shared techniques and tips, but more importantly, he shared his own vulnerabilities. He spoke of his struggles with grief and the way art had been his lifeline, a way to channel his pain into something beautiful. As Sarah's confidence grew, so did her determination to carve out a new path for herself. She began to participate in local art fairs, her pieces gaining admiration from the townspeople. The praise was uplifting, but it was the act of creation itself that brought her the most joy. Each painting was a showcase of her resilience, a tangible proof of her strength. In the warm glow of Jake's studio, surrounded by the comforting hum of the sea and the vibrant colors of her new passion, Sarah found a sense of purpose she had long thought lost. The brushstrokes on the canvas were not just a reflection of her emotions, they were a declaration of her rebirth, a promise to herself that she would rise above her past and create a future filled with beauty and hope. The peaceful rhythm of Seaside Haven began to shift as whispers of discontent stirred beneath the surface. Emily's jealousy, once a simmering undercurrent, now erupted into overt attempts to sabotage the growing bond between Sarah and Jake. Her actions were subtle at first, snide comments and icy glares, but they soon escalated into a campaign of calculated malice. It began one morning when Sarah arrived at the local cafe, her usual spot of warmth and camaraderie. She noticed the sudden hush that fell over the room as she entered, the furtive glances cast in her direction. Conversations that had flowed freely moments before now shifted into cautious whispers. Sarah felt the sting of their scrutiny, an invisible barrier forming between her and the townsfolk she had come to consider friends. Emily, with her flawless facade of charm, had been planting seeds of doubt among the townspeople. She spun tales of Sarah's past, twisting the truth to paint her as a deceitful woman running from her problems. She hinted at improprieties, suggesting that Sarah had been the one to break her marriage vows, not Mark. The rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by the town's insatiable appetite for gossip. Sarah felt the impact of these rumors acutely. Her interactions with the locals became strained, their friendly smiles now tinged with suspicion. Invitations to social gatherings dwindled, and the once welcoming community seemed to close ranks against her. The isolation was a cruel reminder of the fragile peace she had found, now threatened by Emily's venomous machinations. One afternoon, as Sarah worked in Jake's studio, her emotions finally boiled over. She had tried to remain strong, to ignore the whispers and the cold shoulders, but the weight of the judgment was becoming too much to bear. She threw down her brush in frustration, tears blurring her vision. "I don't know how much more of this I can take, Jake," she confessed, her voice breaking. "Emily's turning everyone against me. I feel so alone." Jake crossed the room in an instant, pulling her into his arms. His embrace was a fortress, shielding her from the storm outside. "You're not alone, Sarah. I'm here, and I believe in you. We'll get through this together." Jake confronted Emily, their exchange heated and charged with the intensity of old wounds and new grievances. He made it clear that he wouldn't stand by and let her destroy the life Sarah was trying to build. But Emily was relentless, her jealousy blinding her to reason. Her attempts to undermine Sarah only intensified, each act a desperate bid to reclaim the hold she once had over Jake. As the tension in the town mounted, Sarah's resilience was tested daily. But she found unexpected allies among those who saw through Emily's deceit. A few locals, touched by Sarah's genuine kindness and her passion for art, began to rally around her. They offered words of encouragement, small gestures of solidarity that fortified her spirit. In the eye of the brewing storm, Sarah discovered a core of resilience she hadn't known she possessed. She refused to let Mark's threats, Emily's jealousy, and the town's whispers define her. The tranquility of Seaside Haven was shattered on a brisk autumn morning when Mark Lawson drove into town, his arrival as unwelcome as a storm on a sunny day. Sarah was at the local market, enjoying the crisp air and the vibrant colors of the fall harvest, when she saw him. Her heart plummeted, a cold dread settling in her chest. Mark's presence in the town felt like a dark cloud looming over her hard-won peace. Mark wasted no time in making his intentions known. He approached Sarah with a facade of contrition, his words dripping with false sincerity. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice a blend of urgency and pleading. "I've changed. I've realized my mistakes, and I want to make things right between us." But Sarah knew better. She had seen the depths of his deceit, felt the sting of his betrayal. The man standing before her, with his polished charm and persuasive words, was the same man who had shattered her trust. She shook her head, taking a step back. "There's nothing to talk about, Mark. I've moved on, and I want a divorce." Mark's expression hardened, his eyes flashing with anger. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a menacing whisper. "You think you can just run away and start over? You belong with me, Sarah. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you remember that." True to his word, Mark embarked on a campaign to win Sarah back and discredit Jake. He spread lies about Jake's past, insinuating that he was using Sarah for his own gain. He approached the townspeople with a charm offensive, weaving a narrative of regret and redemption that played on their sympathies. He painted himself as a wronged man, a husband desperately trying to reunite with his misguided wife. Sarah's fear grew with each passing day. She knew how persuasive Mark could be, how easily he could manipulate those around him. She felt the strain on her relationship with Jake, the doubts that Mark's presence sowed between them. The whispers that had started with Emily's jealousy now took on a new, more insidious tone, fueled by Mark's calculated efforts. Jake stood by Sarah, his loyalty unwavering, but she could see the worry in his eyes. The weight of Mark's manipulations pressed down on them both, testing the strength of their bond. One evening, as they sat by the fire in Jake's studio, the tension between them finally broke. "How long is this going to go on, Sarah?" Jake asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "Mark's not going to stop until he gets what he wants. We need to do something." Sarah looked into Jake's eyes, seeing the hurt and determination there. She reached for his hand, her own trembling. "I don't know, Jake. I'm scared. He's relentless. But I won't let him ruin what we have. We need to stand together, face him head-on." Their resolve was put to the test the next day, when Mark confronted Jake in the town square. The scene quickly escalated, drawing the attention of the townspeople. Mark accused Jake of being a fraud, of taking advantage of Sarah's vulnerability. His words were venomous, calculated to sow doubt and division. Jake met Mark's accusations with calm defiance. "This isn't about Sarah's well-being," he said, his voice steady. "This is about you trying to control her. She's not your possession, Mark. She deserves to be happy, and I won't let you take that away from her." The scene ended there, but it had a graver effect. Emily had witnessed the confrontation and recognized, in Mark, a possible ally with a shared interest. That evening, she approached him at the hotel where he was staying. They had dinner together and started to talk about the future, full of insidious plans. The crisp autumn air carried a sense of foreboding as Sarah and Jake continued to navigate the tumultuous waters stirred by Mark and Emily. Despite their best efforts to shield their burgeoning relationship from the storms of jealousy and manipulation, a major incident was about to unfold, one that would test the very foundation of their bond. It began with an invitation. Emily approached Sarah at the local market, her demeanor unusually friendly. "Hey, Sarah," she said, a bright smile on her face. "I'm hosting a small get-together at my place tonight. Jake's invited too. I thought it might be a good opportunity for all of us to clear the air and start fresh. Sarah was wary, but decided to give Emily the benefit of the doubt. All right, I'll come, she said, forcing a smile. She informed Jake about the invitation, and he agreed it might be a good chance to mend fences. That evening, Sarah and Jake arrived together at Emily's house, a quaint cottage on the edge of town. The atmosphere was cozy, the smell of freshly baked cookies wafting through the air. Emily greeted them warmly, ushering them inside where Mark was already present, casually chatting with some of the other guests. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere grew more tense. Mark approached Sarah, a concerned expression on his face. "Sarah, can we talk privately?" he asked, leading her to a quiet corner of the living room. Sarah's unease grew, but she nodded. "What is it, Mark?" Mark sighed, feigning reluctance. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but I think you should know. Jake still has feelings for Emily. I've seen the way he looks at her. They've been spending a lot of time together." Sarah felt a pang of doubt, but shook her head. "I don't believe you, Mark. Jake and I are solid." Mark looked around, as if to ensure no one was listening. "I'm only telling you this because I care about you. You deserve to know the truth." Trying to shake off the unease, Sarah walked into the kitchen to get some air. As she entered, her heart stopped. There, in the dim light, stood Emily and Jake, locked in a kiss. The scene hit her like a freight train, shattering her trust and bringing back painful memories of Mark's betrayal. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she turned and fled the house, her world collapsing around her. She needed to get away, to escape the crushing weight of the betrayal. The next day, Jake tried desperately to contact her, leaving numerous messages and texts. Sarah, heartbroken and confused, finally agreed to meet him at the beach where they had shared so many cherished moments. As soon as she saw him, the emotions she had been holding back surged forward. "How could you, Jake?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. "How could you betray me like this?" Jake looked stricken, his own eyes filling with tears. "Sarah, it's not what it looked like. I swear, Emily kissed me. I was pushing her away. But I saw you." Sarah shouted, the pain in her voice palpable. "How am I supposed to trust you now? After everything I've been through, how could you do this to me?" Jake reached out, his voice desperate. "Sarah, please believe me. Emily set this up. She and Mark are trying to tear us apart. I would never betray you." Sarah's mind was a whirlwind of confusion and hurt. She wanted to believe him, but the image of that kiss was seared into her memory. "I need time, Jake. I can't deal with this right now." Jake's shoulders slumped, the weight of her words crushing him. As Sarah walked away, the pain of distrust and fear threatened to overwhelm her. She spent the night tossing and turning, her mind a storm of emotions. The days following the disastrous party were a haze of pain and confusion for Sarah. She avoided Jake's calls and texts, retreating into herself as she tried to process the betrayal she had witnessed. The image of Jake and Emily kissing haunted her, making it difficult to think clearly. Sensing an opportunity, Mark seized the moment to worm his way back into Sarah's life as part of his and Emily's sinister plan. He began by offering a shoulder to cry on, his demeanor soft and understanding. He showed up at her cottage with flowers and comforting words, reminiscing about the good times they had shared. "Remember when we first met?" Mark said, his eyes warm with nostalgia. "We were so happy, Sarah. We had something special. I know I made mistakes, but people can change. You are the only one for me, and I never stopped loving you." Sarah, still reeling from the hurt caused by Jake, found herself drawn to the familiarity of Mark's presence. He reminded her of the man she had once loved, the man who had made her laugh and feel cherished. Slowly, her defenses began to lower, and she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, Mark had changed. Mark took her out for dinners, walked with her along the beach, and listened to her fears and doubts. He was attentive and kind, doing everything in his power to remind Sarah of the love they once shared. Despite his persistence and apologies, Sarah remained fragile and confused. She didn't want to have feelings for him again, but she considered whether he might be telling the truth. She was terrified of being hurt again, but she also missed Jake and didn't know what to do with all these conflicting emotions. One afternoon, while Sarah was sitting at a cafe, trying to sort through her thoughts, Emily entered and sat at a nearby table. Sarah barely noticed her until the waiter offered Emily a cup of coffee. Emily declined, speaking just loud enough for Sarah to hear. "I shouldn't, thank you. I just learned I'm pregnant. Me and Jake are so happy with the news," Emily said, a hint of triumph in her voice. Sarah's heart stopped. She turned to look at Emily, who caught her eye and smirked ever so slightly. The weight of the revelation crashed down on her. The news, delivered so publicly and so pointedly, was a dagger to Sarah's already wounded heart. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she stood abruptly, knocking her chair over in her haste to leave. She fled the cafe, the pain and confusion overwhelming her. How could this be happening? How could Jake have betrayed her so deeply? Later that day, as Sarah walked aimlessly along the beach, she ran into Jake by chance. He had been giving her the space she asked for, but seeing her now, he couldn't stay silent. "Sarah," Jake called out, his voice filled with concern. "Please, we need to talk." Sarah turned to face him, the agony and anger clear in her eyes. "What do you want, Jake?" "Emily's lying," he said urgently. "She's trying to tear us apart. I swear, I have never been with her like that." "She says she's pregnant with your child," Sarah shot back, her voice breaking. "How am I supposed to believe you?" Jake's eyes filled with anguish. "I don't know why she's doing this, but I swear to you, it's not true. I love you, Sarah. Please, you have to believe me." Sarah wanted to believe him, but the pain was too fresh, the wounds too deep. "How dare you say you love me? When another woman is pregnant with your child? I cannot believe you are just like Mark. How could you?" As Sarah walked away, the pain of distrust and fear threatened to overwhelm her. She spent the night tossing and turning, her mind a storm of emotions. Why was she not worthy of love? Why did the man she fell for only hurt her? What was wrong with her? She kept trying to tell herself that she was being silly. Of course the problem was not with her, the betrayals were not her fault. But another tiny voice kept planting doubt and fear in her heart and making her feel ever so small. The days after their heartbreaking confrontation were filled with turmoil for Jake. Desperate to clear his name and win back Sarah's trust, he knew he needed to prove to Sarah that the accusations against him were false, but he didn't know how to do it. Then one afternoon, Jake noticed Emily walking in a secluded area of the park. Something about her behavior struck him as suspicious, and he decided to follow her. A few days earlier, he had confronted her about the baby, demanding a DNA test. He was adamant that the baby could not be his. Today, he finally saw a chance to uncover the truth. Jake trailed Emily through the park, keeping a safe distance. To his surprise, she met up with Mark. They exchanged a few words, then kissed passionately before Emily climbed into Mark's car. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Emily and Mark had been conspiring all along, using their affair to manipulate Sarah and Jake's relationship. Driven by a mix of anger and determination, Jake decided to gather more evidence. He remembered that a good friend of his worked at the town's only hotel, where Mark certainly had to be staying. He went there, and his friend confirmed that he had seen Mark and Emily together frequently, often behaving more intimately than mere friends. He had heard from the staff also that Emily had stayed overnight on several occasions. Jake was both furious and saddened by the depth of their deceit. He knew he had to talk to Sarah immediately, but convincing her would be difficult. She had shut him out, and he respected her request for space, but now he had undeniable proof of the conspiracy against them. Jake went to Sarah's cottage, his heart pounding. He knocked on the door, calling out to her. "Sarah, please, we need to talk. It's urgent." Sarah opened the door just a crack, her face pale and wary. "What do you want, Jake?" "I told you I don't want to talk to you." "I know, and I'll respect your decision if you never want to see me again after this. But please, just hear me out," Jake pleaded. "I found out something important, and you need to know the truth." Sarah hesitated, then opened the door wider. "All right, come in." Jake entered, taking a deep breath before he began. He told her about following Emily, seeing her with Mark, and how they had kissed. He recounted his visit to the hotel and the confirmation from his friend about their frequent stays together. "Sarah, they've been lying to us all along," Jake said, his voice filled with urgency. "Emily's baby can't be mine. It's Mark's. They're trying to destroy what we have." Sarah listened, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. "How do I know you're telling the truth, Jake? How can I trust that you are not making this crazy story up?" Jake looked into her eyes, pleading with every ounce of sincerity he had. "Come with me, Sarah. See for yourself. You know Mark hurt you before. You know me. Please, give me a chance to prove myself." Sarah wavered, her heart torn between the lingering pain of betrayal and the possibility that Jake was innocent. It was a fantastic story, but she knew that Mark had behaved this way in the past. She felt she had to give Jake the benefit of the doubt. "All right, Jake. I'll come with you." Together, they drove to the hotel. Jake's friend was there, waiting for them. He recounted everything he had told Jake, confirming that Mark and Emily had been having an affair and that Emily had often stayed overnight with Mark and that they were together today as well. Sarah's face paled as the truth sank in. She began to tremble and her legs failed her. Jake caught her just before she fainted. When she woke up, she started to cry, sobbing, tears rolling down her face. They were tears of sadness to think that she almost believed in Mark again. But they were also tears of relief, knowing that Jake did not betray her. Jake pulled her into his arms, kissing her. He felt relief washing over him. "I love you, Sarah. We've both been hurt and manipulated. But we're stronger than this." The night after Sarah discovered the truth about Mark and Emily, she and Jake spent a perfect evening together. They talked, laughed, and reconnected, the weight of the recent turmoil lifting off their shoulders. As they fell asleep in each other's arms, the sense of peace and love between them was palpable. The next morning, they woke up with the sunlight streaming through the window, bathing the room in a warm, golden glow. Jake kissed Sarah's forehead, and she smiled up at him, her heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks. "We're done letting them control our lives," Jake said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Sarah nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "Absolutely. No more drama from Mark and Emily. It's just us now." Jake sighed, thinking about the events that had unfolded. "How do you want to confront them? Do we expose their lies publicly, or do we handle it privately?" Sarah pondered for a moment, then a playful smile tugged at her lips. What if we don't confront them at all? What if we just live our lives, show them that they have no power over us? Jake grinned, a spark of mischief in his eyes. I like the sound of that. Let's stop giving them the satisfaction of our attention. They spent the day enjoying each other's company, rekindling their love and reaffirming their commitment to one another. When they walked through town together, hand in hand, the townspeople were surprised to see them reunited. Whispers and curious glances followed them, but Sarah and Jake ignored it all, focusing on the joy of being together again. That evening, they made a bold decision. They would have dinner at the hotel where Mark was staying, a deliberate move to show that they were united and unbreakable. As they entered the hotel's restaurant, they spotted Mark and Emily at Tay Hotel Bar, holding each other closely. Sarah and Jake calmly took a seat, ordering their meal as if nothing was amiss. They began to enjoy their dinner, the ambience warm and inviting. It wasn't long before Mark and Emily entered the restaurant and were shocked to see Sarah and Jake together. They quickly pulled apart, trying to conceal their connection. Then, looking agitated, they approached the couple's table. Emily, unable to contain herself, spoke first, her voice dripping with hostility. What is this, Jake? You think you can just pretend like you are not the father of my baby? What are you doing here with this woman? Jake met her gaze steadily. Emily, stop lying. I know about your affair with Mark. And I know that, if you are indeed pregnant, he must be the father, because you and I were not involved that way. But, if the baby is mine, if you can provide proof that the baby is mine, I'll take responsibility and provide for the child. That does not mean I will ever be involved with you. I love Sarah, and we're going to continue building our life together. Mark, looking desperate, chimed in. Sarah, you have to believe me. What Jake is saying is crazy. I never had an affair with Emily. Jake's lying. You are the only woman I love. How can you believe him over me? We had a happy life together. Sarah looked at Mark with a calm, resolute expression. Stop lying, Mark. I know about your affair with Emily. I know that everything you said to me since you arrived here were lies. But now it is time to face the truth. I love Jake, and I am in a committed relationship with him. You can stay here, or go back to your life in the city. I don't care. Just know that we are over forever. Mark's face contorted in disbelief. How dare you admit to my face that you are having an affair with this guy? How dare you tell me I am the one lying? Look at this woman, you know me. I would never be involved with someone like Emily. You have to believe me, Sarah. Emily, feeling betrayed and humiliated, finally snapped. Oh, shut up, Mark. Stop pretending. You said you loved me, and we were going to be together after you humiliated Sarah for leaving you. We were getting our revenge from Jake and Sarah, and we would raise our family together. The argument between Mark and Emily escalated, drawing the attention of everyone in the restaurant. Sarah and Jake exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with amusement and relief. They smiled at each other, and then they began to laugh. As the chaos unfolded around them and the evil duo were escorted out of the restaurant, they clinked their glasses of wine, the rich, fragrant liquid shimmering in the candlelight. They took a sip, savoring the moment, content in the knowledge that they had overcome the lies and manipulations that had tried to tear them apart. They leaned into each other, whispering sweet nothings, and enjoying the comfort of their renewed bond. No matter what Mark and Emily did, their love had proven stronger, and they were ready to face the future together, leaving the past behind. The following weeks brought a sense of renewal for Sarah and Jake. The town, having witnessed the dramatic showdown at the hotel, quickly lost interest in the scandal as Mark and Emily's schemes unraveled. Emily left town in disgrace, while Mark returned to the city, his credibility shattered. The shadows of their deceit faded, allowing Sarah and Jake to focus on their future together. One crisp morning, Sarah and Jake decided to take a walk along the beach. The waves lapped gently at the shore, and the salty breeze filled the air. They walked hand in hand, enjoying the peace that had been absent for so long. "Do you ever think about the future, Jake?" Sarah asked, looking up at him. Jake smiled, squeezing her hand. "All the time. And it always includes you. I want to build a life with you, Sarah. A life filled with love, art, and adventure." Sarah's heart swelled with happiness. "I want that too, Jake. I want us to explore the world together, to create beautiful things, and to cherish every moment." They stopped walking and faced each other. Jake kept Sarah's face in his hands, his eyes filled with love and determination. "Then let's make a promise, right here, right now. Let's promise to always be honest with each other, to support each other, and to never let anyone come between us again." Tears of joy welled in Sarah's eyes as she nodded. "I promise, Jake. I promise to always stand by you, to love you, and to cherish our life together." They sealed their promise with a kiss, the ocean waves crashing softly in the background, a testament to the new beginning they were creating together. Over the next few months, Sarah and Jake threw themselves into their passions. Sarah's art career blossomed, her paintings reflecting the vibrant, joyful spirit she had rediscovered. Galleries from the city clamored to showcase her work, and she found herself in high demand. Jake's art also flourished, inspired by their love and the journey they had undertaken together. They spent their days working side by side in their studio, the walls adorned with their creations. Evenings were filled with laughter, intimate dinners, and long walks under the starlit sky. They traveled to nearby towns, exploring new places and finding inspiration in the beauty of the world around them. One evening, as they sat on the porch of Jake's cottage, watching the sun set over the ocean, Jake turned to Sarah with a twinkle in his eye. "Sarah, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Sarah looked at him curiously. "What is it, Jake?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a beautiful, simple ring. "Sarah Lawson, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in life, my muse, and my forever love?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she gazed at the ring, then back at Jake's hopeful eyes. "Yes, Jake. Yes, I will marry you." They embraced, their hearts bursting with joy and love. The promise they had made on the beach was now solidified with a new commitment, one that would carry them through whatever life had in store. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, held on the beach where they had shared so many important moments. Surrounded by close friends and the serene beauty of the ocean, they exchanged vows, pledging their love and devotion to each other. As they danced under the moonlight, Sarah whispered in Jake's ear, "I love you, Jake. More than words can say." Jake held her close, his heart full. "I love you too, Sarah. Forever and always." Together, they looked out at the horizon, the future stretching out before them like an open canvas, ready to be filled with the colors of their dreams and the brushstrokes of their love. With their hearts intertwined and their spirits soaring, they stepped forward into their new life, hand in hand, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead.